Christmas's best song is not Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas. Everyone knows that it's actually El Burrito Sabanero, and in it, we have this line. That's the imperative second-person singular form of the verb apurar. And if you consult any dictionary, such as the Real Academia Española's Diccionario de la Lengua Española, it will tell you that apurar means something equivalent to the English verbs to hurry up or to hasten. But it wasn't always the case. Roughly about 400 years ago, it had a completely different meaning. And I only realized this when reading through my favorite Baroque play. Yes, that's right. We're talking again about Pedro Calderón de la Barca's La vida es sueño. Because in his opening monologue, Segismundo uses this verb in a very different way to how we're accustomed to using it today. I've had to change shooting locations because of the rain outside. But going back to La vida es sueño, Segismundo's famous monologue opens like this. Apurar cielos pretendo, ya que me tratáis así. ¿Qué delito cometí contra vosotros naciendo? And I battled to understand this. I read this segment over and over again, trying to figure out what Segismundo is actually trying to say here. And it became pretty evident after time that the confusion wasn't due to the irregular syntax of this poem. It's in fact more because there's a semantic change. There's a semantic difference between how we use apurar today and how Segismundo meant apurar in his monologue. And this became evident because and I only realized this because if you actually look at the word carefully and break it down, it's very clear that it must have meant something very different 400 years ago and in the Middle Ages as well, and probably in that transition from late Latin to early Romance. Look at the word itself. It's constituted by a, which I would assume comes from the Latin preposition ad. It has the ar verbal ending, and then of course there's pura in the middle, likely meaning pure. So it stands to reason that apurar initially meant to purify something, and certainly enough, some of the research I did seems to confirm this. If we look at Alfonso X's General Historia, written in about 1270s, we see apurar used in this context. Apurar los saberes y dejar los verdaderos. Purify the thoughts and leave them true. So we have attestation that in the Middle Ages, apurar meant to purify in this metaphorical sense. But that doesn't entirely help us. After all, it's very clear that Segismundo isn't talking about purifying anything in his monologue, and how that would come to signify the modern sense of hastening that we see in El Burrito Sabanero. All of this remains a mystery for now. If we consult a text lying somewhere between Alfonso X's General Historia and Calderón de la Barca's Vida es Sueño, we actually can get an idea of how this evolution might have taken place. And I'm talking here about Sebastián de Covarrubias' Tesoro. And Covarrubias talks explicitly about apurar. He has an entry for it. And it's an exceedingly complete entry with a whole variety of different meanings for this word cited. And I want to list some of them here if you don't mind me reading off of a text. Covarrubias assures us that apurar means limpiar alguna cosa de excrementos y de la materia grasa, so to clean something out. He also speaks about apurar un negocio, desmarañarle y aclararle, sin que haya en él duda ni cosa incierta. So that is to say, purify a job in the metaphorical sense of bringing it to completion, leaving nothing left to be done. It's actually pretty clear how that might have developed from the first sense of purifying something, cleaning it out entirely. And then finally, Covarrubias gives us basically the answer. Apurar un hombre is one of the examples he uses, and he gives us a translation. Apurar un hombre es apretarle mucho. Clearly see, when Covarrubias' Tesoro was published, apurar had already gained the meaning of pressing someone, pressurizing someone to do something. And from there, we can see how it would have developed into the modern sense of hurry. So much for part of the puzzle. The biggest question is, why is Segismundo talking about apurar? And I think the answer might lie first in us trying to understand what Segismundo meant. Now, my interpretation of this particular passage is that when Segismundo says, apurar cielos pretendo, ya que me tratáis así, ¿qué delito cometí contra vosotros naciendo? He's basically saying, I am trying to figure out what I have done, what kind of crime I have committed against you. Apurar, in this sense, actually means something like to discern, to discover, and to understand. And I think that that is semantically more related to the example that we saw in Alfonso X's General Historia, in which purifying one's thoughts might be seen as removing anything extraneous, removing any obstacle towards finding the truth. Segismundo is trying to discern what crime he has committed by eliminating all false possibilities. And in fact, that's exactly what he goes on to do in the rest of the monologue. This word that seemed to simply be a strange semantic phenomenon is in fact crucial for understanding the whole of this extremely famous monologue. Now, I hope that I left everything there sufficiently clear. I haven't followed the cleanest of scripts in writing this. Let me know in the comments below if there's something important I missed out here, or if there's something that you would like some clarity on. I'd like also to cite a very useful resource that I consulted. It was a journal article from the early 90s in the Hispanic Review. I'll leave a link for that in the description if you want to dive a little bit more into that. But for now, I'm going to say muchas gracias por ver, and I will see you in the next video. Adios.